8:43 here in the region. We are wrapping up another summer of Chuck 2, the Electric Boogaloo, here on a beautiful Monday morning, June 30th, here in the region. People are asking me how long we're going. We're just going to go. I'm going to go for a few more minutes today, and then we're just going to keep going on Mondays, scraping the bottom of the barrel, as a caller mentioned earlier today, bringing in some different guests, bringing in some different voices, people that you don't normally see or hear, and get different opinions, because I think that's what makes life interesting, instead of just having the same, three voices over and over again. So what do you think, Joe? Have you been learning anything?
I've learned a lot, actually. I can't lie, when I first started here, I had no idea what I was doing. I just needed an internship, communication related, and I was running out of time because I wanted to graduate in December, January. And at PNW, you can only take 6 classes per semester, and I needed 7 to graduate with both my minors. So I needed this internship to basically get me to graduate on time. And I showed up every day with a resume until they finally let me start doing it. I guess I annoyed Jed enough or Sam enough to let me join up, and it's been an experience ever since. I mean, you sit back here and there's 1,400 dials, there's 1,200 headsets, there's 5 computers. It's exactly like the movies. You walk in here and it looks like you're about to control an alien spaceship or something like that. And then obviously Matt and Adriana have done a great job teaching me. Obviously I'm starting to be on my own now, and they've done a great job teaching me, and I'm very thankful for both of them. But it's been a great experience, and I'm happy that hopefully I start getting paid soon.
Yeah, no, you're doing a great job. And it's just like I said, it really is an honor to be part of this radio station, because it is a unique experience that you'll appreciate the rest of your life. You'll, believe it or not, you'll miss it someday. But I know you said we got some callers.
And they left us at break.
And what's that, the caller? Okay, perfect. So we can chat some more. So I was just talking about, we had Larry the K on earlier.
By the way, scraping the bottom of the barrel, if you had Larry on and you guys made your own show, instead of Summer of Chuck 3, you had Larry and Chuck scraping the bottom of the barrel, I would like that. That's a good name.
Yeah, well, no, I think that'll be next year. We're scraping the bottom of the summer barrel. So, but yeah, so you and I were just talking about what's going on in New York City, because I think it's really an interesting development that as things get more difficult for the younger generation, they tend to grab onto these ideas of Zohran Mamdani, sort of these ideas of having, that we have to tax the rich. The local bodega is gouging, so we need to have government-run grocery stores. A lot of interesting things coming out of his mouth, and I wonder how grounded they are. And I mean, that's always the question: is when somebody brings new ideas, is how grounded in reality are these ideas, or are these kind of just making stuff up? Hey, I think that this is and that's one of my interesting thoughts about government, is like Larry and I were talking about earlier with this idea of layers of government, things like that, is you assume that when government does something, they take your money and they do something with it, your assumption is hey, this has to be grounded in reality. I'm sure there were lots of meetings and committees and everybody was going, hey, we should do this. A lot of times that's not the case. And even now, what's going on right now in Washington with the big, beautiful bill, they're going to go back to debating that here this morning, is that a lot of this stuff is just sort of hey, I think we should do this. And then if enough guys on your team go, yeah, that's a good idea, we should, that's how government is running anymore, is a lot of people with just ideas going, hey, we should do this. Okay. Well, what is that grounded in? Is there a study that says that we should spend $2 billion more on this, or we should cut this and spend more on that? No, I just, hey, it seems like a good idea. And that's a lot of what government is. It's crazy when you start thinking about it, because when you talk about Washington, you're talking about the billions and the trillions of dollars, where it's hey, let's do this and see how it works. Oh, it didn't work? Okay, let's throw more money at it. Oh, it didn't work again? We should throw more money at it. That's literally how government works. It's we just keep throwing more money at it. Let's create another committee and throw more money at it. And then it's oh, it didn't work. So let's take a call. Good morning, caller on the air.
I do want to say one thing before. Another name, if you had Larry on a show, you guys could be, I now pronounce you Chuck and Larry.
There you go.
All right. Now for the phone call.
Fantastic. Good morning, caller.
Oh, hey, it's Brad again.
Yes.
How you doing?
Good.
I'm sorry. Who's the?
This is Joe.
Who's the producer?
Joe is the producer.
Joe. Okay. Joe, I would love to see, I want you to stay and I want you to get paid. And if I got a corner of the morning guy one day to tell him I'm gonna. But here's the thing. I would want to know over time, after hearing a bunch of us talking and bringing in different views, how or if you may change your stance for more of a Democrat to more of a middle person or middle ground. And are any of us callers out here influencing you in any way or getting you to think twice or anything? Because in my opinion, if we don't get to your generation, because I'm skipping the millennials, they're just too egotistical and full of themselves, and they got too many trophies. But I did notice over time that there is a rift between Gen Z and the millennials. And I think that you guys are a key to the to really some change, because us Gen Xers out here, we'll still whoop some butt. I mean, you want to bring it. But we're getting a little tired. and we need some backup. And I don't know, are we doing our good job? Are we getting you to change your mind, or at least not change your mind, because that's not really, to come to your own conclusions, which is more important to me. Are we helping in any way?
Yeah, I would say that you guys definitely are. I mean, I sit here and I listen to you guys pretty attentively for about, 3 hours, 3 times a week. And
God bless you.
Yeah, so I get to learn. I definitely learn a lot of things. I think the one thing is about me, and I was speaking to my father about this this past weekend. It's just, like I've always had my values. I don't know exactly where they line up politically, but I've always been like a humanitarian kind of person. So I just, I love people. Everybody deserves to be loved and treated the same way. Those are the kind of beliefs that I stand on and that my parents taught me growing up. So whichever, like, obviously I also believe that there are circumstances for everything. That's something I find very important that I've kind of learned myself, is that there are circumstances for everything. Nothing is cut and clear one way. Which is why I find it very important to listen to both sides of the story. Like I was saying on air, my dad is a pretty big Trump supporter and my mother is an immigrant, and they have two completely opposite viewpoints when it comes to not just politics, but basically everything at this point.
Well, here's a question. Let me ask two things. I want to ask you a question. I want to ask Brad a question. You say it sort of like, my mother's an immigrant, and you sort of make, like, by default that means she's not a Trumper. But I mean, that's the thing, is that, like, so I come from a family of immigrants, and they are very much, many of them are Trump supporters.
You're right.
So
I shouldn't have make it sound like it's.
So you basically said my dad's a Trump supporter, my mother's an immigrant, and then by default that makes it sound like she has an alternative opinion because she's an immigrant, right? I mean, that's it's an interesting thing, that the way you pose it. But Brad, my question to you was, with these young people, one of the things that we're seeing fewer and fewer people that are basically declaring a party at this point. We're seeing the majority of young people are saying, I'm sort of an independent. And so that becomes a question, like, even when, we're talking about Mamdani in New York City, this idea of, you basically, if you're not declaring a party, you're kind of just looking for the guy with the best ideas, right? And so even like in New York City, when the rent's too damn high, a guy comes in and says, hey, I'm going to make groceries cheaper. On the surface, it sounds like a good idea. And if you don't know any better, if you don't know the history of socialism and communism on this planet, you go, okay, cheaper groceries, cheaper rent, that sounds promising. And that worries me.
When you go cheaper, you go cheaper in quality. The reason why we are capitalists here, and the reason why we are such a thriving country, in many ways, because we are, even though we have this debt, that's a skewed thing in many ways, because let's face it, we're slaves to the Federal Reserve. But as long as God, how can I say it? When you cheapen things, you will cheapen the quality of it. We have the availability of the best products here. And sometimes you've got to purchase the middle ground, or sometimes you've got to purchase the better product. And I'm sorry, but when the government comes in, their only goal is to cut costs. They're too expensive to run. That's budgets. And when you get that in there, I do fear that that is going to just make New York just a bigger cesspool than it is. And the promise of socialism, if anyone wants to know about it, just go back and look. It's never been successful. I mean, communism is not successful.
You know what I've been saying, Brad? I think every American high schooler should have to spend a long weekend in Cuba. I mean, honestly, I spent a week in Cuba, And I went off the beaten path. Instead of asking the government tour guides, I went off the beaten path and met people. Said, okay, tell me about communism, and tell me how this is working. And they all hated it. They said, we go to the grocery store once a week. Whatever shows up, we buy. And if we're lucky, it's stuff that we need. And if it's not, we go back next week. And, even I always think, who is it, Boris Yeltsin, that walked into an American grocery store and he was like stunned. Like he was walking into Disney World, like, oh my, again, that Bernie Sanders, 33 kinds of deodorant. He walked into the meat aisle, goes, oh, meat is plentiful. The meat waits for me instead of the other way around, right? I mean, if you know your history, like I've seen how this plays out. This idea of having government grocery stores and all that, that just it terrifies me that a place like New York City is grabbing onto these ideas.
Right, and that's like entrepreneurial central capital of the world.
Right.
And they won't. The thing is what the media has done is they won't show all the people that are happy in these countries that their governments are falling, like Cuba or Iran. Even like there were a lot of people in Iran, and I'm not promoting any kind of bombing or anything by Trump because I have my issues with that guy. But there were a ton of people speaking out about Iran that we don't want this government here anymore. I mean, if you knew what happened to Iran before the Shah came in,
it was
they
beautiful.
had nightclubs.
It was a beautiful country, and
it
girls were wearing
wonderful.
mini skirts and things like that. So here becomes the question that I have, Brad. And this addresses some of the messages I got last week. Is this idea that women are being oppressed and all these things are happening in Iran? It's sort of like, well, Chuck, you have a responsibility. I'm too old, so it's my son. Like we have a responsibility to send your son to Iran to help the oppressed women. Like, at what point is it when everybody says they hate the government that's in Iran, like at what point is it on them to figure this out?
Right.
Overthrow your government. Like I can't go and impose democracy on you because as soon as I leave 20 years later, like in Afghanistan, things will fall 3 days later. So this idea of it's incumbent on us as Americans to go help other. Like I wish I could save the world, but I can't, and we can't afford to. So that's sort of my argument. Is like, if Iran isn't ready to help itself, how can I, send bombs and guns there and solve their problems?
I think the only way that we can, we can't do the bombs and guns, so the only thing we have left is our tongues and what we can speak and how we can promote it to one another and do it through encryption and things like that can't be censored by governments. And more people need to learn about that and the ways to do this, and you will see the change. And we've seen it with currency. We have a new kind of currency. And how did that happen? We got people together, we spread the word, we helped promote it, we got other people involved, and then the big guys came in and said, hey, wait a minute, this is a great thing. We can now track assets in real time, and we can make some real change. And that is really what I think is happening. A lot of people aren't going to want to accept that, but it's kind of like what AI is doing. It's like it's leveling the playing field. There's no more excuses that I can't do this, or I can't learn this, I can't figure this out. All you got to do is go ask now. So if you don't want to go ask, then you don't want to be a part of it. You don't deserve the things that all the people that are fighting for the freedom are fighting for change and what comes along with that. If you're not participating, then just shut up. Just be quiet. And this is what we're doing every morning here, participating. And my God, 3 hours of us? Oh, my Lord, I couldn't stand 3 hours of myself, let alone having to make sure that the editing is going through. But, great show today, you guys. I love it. Hopefully you get some more callers in. And thanks for taking us through the week. This is going to be a great start to it.
No, that's a perfect place to end it. Because we got to wrap up so we can go say hi to the boss and do some other things. But I will be back next week. I don't know whoever. I'm going to keep scraping, see who we can scrape up for next week. But this is Chuck. Thanks for tuning in. The Summer of Chuck 2, the Electric Boogaloo here on a beautiful Monday morning on WJOB. I will see you again if the boss sees fit. I will see you again next month.